可以把所有的都导出来，音频。
那行，那就最后导2是吧？
我已经导出，我前3、昨天的我已经导了，但是就是一块拷给你。
我看导是怎么导的？
有一个，这会儿看不到了，它那儿有一个会议记录，点开那个导出。
然后呢，还得凑个时长呢。刚才那堆纸呢在这儿啊。
是啊，找我一套起码。
你是怕不够啊，还是？
他用不完450块钱。那没事，再空放一会儿也行。
就是空放也得放啊。
最后空放就把它放满。
留啊，赵宝，你分享别给我留。
我那个
你跟他们说。
我已经在。
你看，导出来是这样。
它是翻开它自己。
不是，它是每一套里面有翻译结果，有音频，有转写结果。但是我就全选了。
啊，行。那说这3场是他自己自动翻的。
这是3个内容。每次他都记了，有这么多东西。
我知道，刚才的3个文件夹是直接
对，
导出来的。
对，我就默认的那个名字我没改。如果
比如说你中间停了一下，他是不是认为
暂停的？
不是，我只是暂停，不是取消就没事。
这个到这边，他为什么开场他知道了？那个简单啊。
你们这提醒还挺深。是时间到。
Hello, it's time to start the speech. Conference.
Very good. Okay, I'll go. Shouldn't I go there or?
Yes.
But I can use that microphone.
Better this one better because you need to unlock it.
Okay. Good morning, everybody. Good afternoon. Good evening. I think it's time to get this session started. Thank you for coming. I see a lot of faces already here sitting. So let me just provide a very brief introduction. As we all know, inclusive and timely data are crucial for measuring progress and addressing the needs of all segments of society, especially the most vulnerable, as emphasized by the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development. However, as we learned yesterday, despite the massive amount of data being generated globally every day, effective data use for decision remains a challenge. The concept of data graveyards, where unused data become lost and forgotten, was discussed in depth during the session organized yesterday by SDSN Trends and Open Data Watch, where an amazing panel of experts highlighted strategies and lessons for national statistical offices to improve data use. Today, continuing on this line of thought along thematic area 2 on maximizing the use and value of data for better decision making at the 2023 United Nations World Data Forum, it is my honor and privilege to welcome you all to this session on adding value to survey data through enhanced interoperability and data integration, with a really exciting lineup of speakers who will be sharing their experiences, insights, and expertise around key aspects of survey data integration with other data sources, including improved access, interoperability, quality frameworks, and ethical standards and confidentiality protection. So we will hear from Mr. Sanuddin Ahmad from the Department of Statistics, Malaysia, who has extensive experience in macroeconomic statistics and a passion for econometric analysis. From Pearl Kiei from the University of Ghana, who will be sharing her experience with us in the use of survey data in small area estimation and its applications in Ghana. We also will hear from David Newhouse from the World Bank, who will provide valuable insights on integrating survey data with geospatial information and other non-traditional data sources. And from my dear colleague, Hao Yi Chen, the coordinator of the Inter-Secretariat Working Group on Household Surveys, who will shed light on the challenges and priorities in positioning household surveys as a key source of knowledge and insights for the next decade. So I would like to encourage all of you present here in Hangzhou and remotely to actively participate in this session by asking questions, sharing your experiences, and engaging in a lively discussion where we can learn from each other and explore together innovative approaches to enhance the value and use of survey data through interoperability and data integration. So now, without further ado, let's hear from our esteemed presenters, and I would like to invite Mr. Ahmad to take the floor.
Thank you, Luis. My dear colleague speakers, ladies and gentlemen, I'm Zainuddin from Department of Statistics, Malaysia. So I will be sharing our experience, Malaysia experience in adding value to survey data through enhancing interoperability and data integration. Next slide, please. Next slide. Oh, sorry. Okay, thank you very much. Okay, this is the outline of my presentation. And these are the priority areas in the household survey. So it is about increased cost effectiveness, relevance of survey data production, and counteract criticism of household survey in terms of respondent burden coverage and timeliness. And this objective studied by Law and Raghunathan in 2017, which touched on improving of efficiency of sampling by using multi-source frames, bridging household survey data gaps through direct record linkages, and improving the precision, timeliness, and granularity. I won't dwell detail in this one. This is the process of planning data integration, which amongst identify data sources, gathering sufficient information, and planning the process of data integration. And this is the type of data integration, which is integrate surveys and administrative sources, surveys and sensors, census and administrative sources, and within administrative sources. Okay, so this one is more on Malaysia experience. So simulation on interoperability and integration of household surveys. Malaysia is currently at the initial stage to explore the interoperability and integration of household survey. The main objective is to come out with a full report on data integration guideline. Point number 1, integrating census and survey data. Malaysia conducts population and housing census like other countries once in every 10 years. The recent population census was conducted in 2022. Integrating population census, household income survey, and salary and wages survey will result in a robust household profile for future survey and sampling frame. Point number 2, integrating survey and survey data. Household income survey, salary and wages survey, which can be integrated with household expenditure survey and labor force survey. The aim of this exercise is to produce new set of statistics. For example, integrated data on poverty statistic, that is poverty line income calculation. From this, Malaysia poverty statistic can also be produced, which include hardcore poverty, extreme poverty, and relative poverty statistic. Point 3, integrating survey and administration record. The integration between household expenditure survey and labor force survey with administration record or data such as taxation, employee provident fund can be used to gauge policy effectiveness. This integration can tell how much budgeted assistance fund have been distributed to the related agencies for helping the household to increase their income and reduce household consumption burden. For household income and expenditure survey, it could show how much assistance fund has been actually received by household and where do they spend in consumption of household expenditure. Currently, DOSM has the social accounting matrix, which is produced from the integration between economic and social statistics. Point 4, integrating both administration record. For example, this is between taxation and employee provident funds with health assistance and education assistance. Integrating these two sources can improve quality of survey data. DOSM has developed a database from various government agencies to establish what we call Malaysia Social Protection Database. Among data includes IKASE, a special program to help needy households in Malaysia, data from Social Welfare Department and other enforcement agencies. And the last point here is integrating administration data and census. This integration enables linkages between economic and social statistics. For example, the environment statistic from economic census and health assistance from Ministry of Health and education assistance from Ministry of Higher Education may enrich information in household surveys such as accessible on future employment enrollment and household well-being statistics. Challenges and recommendations. For information, DOSM is in the midst of enhancing its national statistical system. Amongst the main agenda are to have National Statistic and Data Council, to amend the current Statistical Act, to implement a function of DOSM as central agency for statistical services, to have and to appoint chief data officer at ministry, government departments, government agency, state and district level. And in the process of establishing National Data Analytic Center. Challenge number 1, improve accessibility of other data source for integration. For this challenge, DOSM managed to get support from Government of Malaysia. The Deputy Prime Minister is the chair of National Statistic and Data Council. The Council's main role is to be the highest advisory body in providing guidance and direction to strengthen the governance of national statistic system. Besides, the Minister of Economy is the chair of Executive Committee of the National Statistics and Data Council. With the members include the Chief Secretary to the government, who is the highest ranking of Malaysia's civil service, and DOSM as the Secretariat. The role of this executive committee is to identify and determine the needs for strengthening the national statistical system. With this council, the highest and ranking committee, this would facilitate communication and convince all the government agencies to share their data. The second challenge, foster data interoperability which is the common problem. When involve other agency, so we have to overcome this. These, in short measures, we establish chief data officer at district, state, and government agency. So to ensure that data can be directly used by DOSM. I go to the next slide. DOSM support the initiative taken by United Nations Inter-Secretariat Working Group on household survey on the studies to develop a country's best practices for the integration guideline. Malaysia is currently designing a related questionnaire to collect information of countries' practices on data integration and enhancing data interoperability. The questionnaire is under UN Secretariat Comments and Improvement. With that, I end my presentation. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Sanudi. This presentation very much sets the stage for a very interesting conversation around the benefits and the objectives of data integration to produce new statistics, to aid in policy effectiveness and improve the quality of the data itself. I think it would be a good idea to keep the questions at the end of all the four speakers. So let me introduce now our next speaker, Pearl from the University of Ghana. If I can ask my colleagues to give the floor to her. She is joining us remotely. Well, we see you now, and the floor is you to share with us the experience in Ghana in the use of surveys for small area estimation.
Thank you very much, and good morning to everybody. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you very well, and we see your presentation.
Great. Okay, thank you. So, thank you all for making it to this presentation. This morning, I'll just briefly speak on the experience we've had with conducting small area estimation in Ghana over the past year. So, I'll start with just the context and then share some of the experiences we'd had, meaning the lessons learned and the challenges and the plans that we want to put in place going forward. So to give a brief background, so I don't work in the National Statistical Office. I work at the university, and the regional UNFPA office wanted to build capacity in country in small area estimation. So they decided to add one faculty member to the officials from the Ghana Statistical Service, so that we can support with making sure that this capacity is cascaded down to different, parts of the country. So we had this initial training, and then when we came back, we subsequently trained 6 more staff from the head office. And really the plan was to start integrating the census with survey data. So the benefit of the timing is we had just had our census in 2021, and we went for this training mid 2022, just before the micro data for the census was about to release. And then we had this 2022 annual household income and expenditure survey. So there really was a good opportunity to put into practice what we were learning. And the the 6 staff we trained were head up. Each of them had to estimate these indicators. At the statistical office, there was capacity building ongoing. The UNFP, the World Bank approach, focus on the UNFP one because that's what I'm involved in, which uses a dichotomous variable for the indicator being estimated. So going forward, I'm sure at the NSO there should be some discussion on how to complement these two approaches going forward. And currently, we don't have any publications from either approach based on what is happening so far. Just to give you the background, in Ghana, we have 16 regions and 261 districts. So typically, the surveys are representative at the regional level. One of the benefits from the census we just had is that we realized that there's substantial inter-regional disparities, which normally you won't be able to see from the survey. So just to give you an idea, this is just looking at the disparity between the districts with the most underserved districts in terms of proximity to health facility and the least underserved. So within the regions, you see quite a bit of variations. And I want to point out the one where you can see the widest gap. So this is a region that typically would rank in the top 3 in most indicators, but you always find that they have a district in the bottom of the rankings. They also have districts at the top. So it really made it important that we are able to use this small area estimation to get better indicators at the district level. Having said that, I will speak about the experiences that we are having. So really the important thing that we learned is, as this process should start, there really should be a lot of engagement at the NSO on why we need the small area estimation and really the gap that it fills. So as I said earlier, there's quite a bit of intra-regional disparity, but it's something that we didn't adequately sensitize staff on, and the reason why we should get additional level beyond the region, because when we started doing the small area estimation, some of the maps that were generated, there really wasn't much variation at the regional level because they had challenges estimating the model. So ultimately, you produce a district map where all the districts are very similar within the region, and that's not very informative. So really, that understanding of why we need a small area estimation and what is that is very much needed. So this is just an example of what I was talking about. So you can see these regional clusters, which we know in reality that there's much more variation at the district level. Then the key challenges we had, the small area estimation is really not the skills you need. They are not things that are traditionally part of the NSO's work. So beyond just actually learning the technique, you would have to do quite a bit of literature review on the indicators that you want to estimate. And once you've done that, then you have to identify the explanatory variable. So again, this is something that is not routinely part of the work they are doing, and you may need additional skill if you don't have it to be able to do that. And then you need to run a regression model. So again, you have to have some skill in understanding how to put models together. And then when you are done, you need to map the results. So in terms of the last two, the UNFPA was very helpful because they did give us codes for Stata and SPSS, and we were told there's also our code available. And for mapping the results, they asked us to use data wrapper, so we don't need to know a GIS software to be able to map those results. So that was helpful, but really the capacity is the issue, because these are skills that are not traditionally required. Some of them may not have it. So some capacity building in these other skills is needed before the actual estimation can be done. Then of course you have to have fairly advanced data, SPSS or R, to conduct this small area estimation. And then finally, we realized that sometimes you may need to merge the census and survey with a third data source. So the map I showed earlier, where there wasn't much variation within the regions, we found out it's really because there were not enough explanatory variables in the census. So one of the things that the UNFPA tried to support us to do was to work with a team from Burkina Faso who had merged geospatial climate data with both the census and the survey to be able to better estimate their model. So that's the next step and the next level of complexity that also poses challenges, adding that third data source to make sure that the small area estimation can be done properly. And the last challenge that we face is the process of harmonizing. So with this small area estimation, before you could go ahead and do the actual estimation, you need to have all the variables in both data sources, the explanatory variables should be exactly the same. They should have the same name, and the coding of the category should be the same. Sorry. So this is just a picture of what we had to do when we were harmonizing. We were using data from the 2010 census and the 2011 mix, because when we started the training, our census data was not, the 2021 was not available. So we had 29 variables in our model, and in the 29, there was only one variable that was named exactly the same in the census and the survey. And then we had an additional 14 where the names were different, but the categorizations were the same. And for the others, which was about half, we had to recode both of them to make them harmonize. So that is something that really, as we are going forward, we are committed to working on. So making sure that there is more harmonization in the way variables are named and coded, the microdata across the census surveys, so that we limit the amount of time that is spent with the harmonization. With really, in our experience, that really took up maybe 80 to 90% of the efforts in doing the estimation, just getting the variables in the two data sources harmonized. So it's something very important. Then of course we intend to complete and publish the current analysis. So the deliverable for the team is to produce a policy brief on the indicators that they are estimating, and then we would go to the relevant sector and then share our findings with them. And then finally continuing to cascade this training. So we plan in this quarter to have another training. So currently there's myself and two other faculty from my institution who have now learned this approach. We want to go to two other academic institutions and then start with training two faculty, and then we move to the regional offices. So we've done the head office, now we want to move to the regional offices. And based on the experiences we've had, we want to use a hybrid approach. So we would have about a 6-week engagement with them, really looking at these other skills. So identifying the indicator, identifying the explanatory variables, doing the harmonization before we actually meet in person to do the estimation. So I'll thank you for your attention.
Thank you so much. Pearl, thank you so much for this very, very good presentation. It's very clear the challenges that we face when in the field, when the rubber hits the road, and the importance also of partnering with academia at the local level to build the capacity and the use of new methods, new technologies. And also what caught my attention is your emphasis on the challenge of data integration before we even start working with the data, and so the importance of standardization that could enable us to be much more effective. So let me now pass the floor to our colleague David from the World Bank, who will also share his experiences from the global perspective in the implementation of small area estimation methods and the opportunities that we can derive from that. So David, now over to you. You are also remotely, I think we see you now on screen. If you can share your presentation and test and say hello to the audience, then we can move on.
Great. Thank you very much, Luis. Can everyone hear me?
Yes, we hear you very well, and your presentation is very clear in front of us. Thank you.
Wonderful. So first, I'm really honored to be able to speak at this conference, and I want to thank you and Hao Yu Chen and the ISWGHS for helping to organize it. I'm going to be speaking about adding value to survey data through data fusion. This is very much related to what the others have spoken about, but I'm going to talk mostly about implementing survey data with publicly available geospatial data. which has been a relatively new development and a very exciting development, I think, in how we can better integrate data to obtain more granular statistics. Whilst recent census data is always the preferred option in terms of integrating survey data with auxiliary data, there is robust and growing evidence that combining survey data with freely available geospatial indicators can improve the accuracy and precision of poverty estimates and of estimates of other indicators as well when recent census data is not available. And so what we've done in these 4 countries is compare estimates obtained from combining survey data with geospatial with estimates from the gold standard of combining survey data with recent census data, or in some cases derived from census data directly. And one can see that for all these different countries and for some different poverty measures, which are different across these different countries, the correlation between the geospatial estimates and the census-based estimates are high, between 0.86 and 0.88. And adding the geospatial indicators also makes the estimators much more precise. In some cases, like in Burkina Faso, it's way more precise when measured by mean squared error. In other cases, like Sri Lanka, it's a much lower reduction. But there's always a benefit from integrating survey data with geospatial data relative to just reporting estimates alone. In work I've done jointly with Josh Murfeld, Mikhail Weber, and Partha Lahiri, we've also used this kind of data fusion between survey data and geospatial data to look at men's and women's labor force participation. That's an important indicator, especially of women's economic empowerment. And we find that in Mexico, in urban Mexico, at the municipal level, that bringing in geospatial data to combine with survey data also increases the correlation with the census and improves the precision of the estimates as well. There's been a bit of a debate in the literature where some studies have taken the approach of using geospatial imagery directly and training convolutional neural network, which is a quite fancy prediction model that converts the imagery into estimated values, for example, for poverty, whereas other studies have taken the approach of using interpretable spatial features like nighttime lights or land classifications or population density and using that to model poverty. To the best of my knowledge, these 2 approaches have been compared in 2 contexts in Sri Lanka and Uganda. And in both cases, the interpretable features gave more accurate estimates relative to the benchmark measure. So just some case studies of how we've applied this kind of estimation in a couple of poverty assessments in some forthcoming countries at the world. The Tanzania poverty assessment did use a combination of survey and geospatial data, and you can see the comparison in these 2 maps. The one on the left shows estimated poverty rates by region, which is a higher level of aggregation. The one on the right shows the estimated poverty rates by district, which is a lower level of aggregation, and you can see the increased detail. And there is some variation within the districts in these estimates. What I find striking is that when you measure the average coefficient of variation, both of these estimates are equally precise. So the extra geospatial data that it's going into the right map is allowing us to report one level below at the same level of precision. And additional geospatial data is approximately equal to quadrupling the sample size, but is essentially free because these are freely available geospatial indicators. Similarly, the recent poverty assessment for the Gambia, we were able to disaggregate to the ward level, which is one level below the district level. The median CVs for the poverty estimate was about 5 to 6, which is, I think, perfectly acceptable for reporting these estimates, and about 45% less than the survey estimates, an efficiency gain equal to more than tripling the size of the survey. Though mostly this has been applied to poverty and wealth so far, it can be applied to other indicators. Again, for the Gambia work, we looked at using data from the Demographic and Health Survey at the distance school secondary school, health clinic, and hospital. And if you plot that against the poverty rates, this is the kind of analysis that I think can be useful. What you can see is that poor wards are much further away from hospitals on average than they are, especially from primary schools, but even secondary schools and health clinics. So you really see whereas the least poor wards have a much more similar distance to all four of those services, the poorest wards, that gap widens. A third case study is that work is in progress to apply these kind of techniques in the Sahel region in Chad, Guinea, Mali, and Niger. We don't have census data in those countries, so we can't validate it against census data, but we do see the decision of the estimate, and I'd expect that report to be released this summer. So from my perspective, these kinds of model-based estimates, while using geospatial data, while not as good as census data, if you have recent census data, are better than just reporting survey estimates. And so how can we make them more routine? I think building awareness and motivation is key. Enabling access to geolocated surveys. This requires, to do this kind of estimation, we require the coordinates of enumeration areas, although these can be jittered to preserve confidentiality, as is done fairly routinely with the demographic and health surveys. It's also possible to release village identifiers with a corresponding shapefile. We need to make it more easy to process geospatial indicators for people who have expertise in this, as my colleague Dr. Kie was saying. This does require some new skills, and building capacity is tricky. These are indicators like land classification, population density, building density, and nighttime lights, precipitation. All these things are publicly available, but there is a learning curve on using tools like Exact Extractor or Google Earth Engine to get them. We are trying to develop a new R package, tentatively called GeoLink, to make this easier to add publicly available indicators to geolocated survey data, but that's still in the early stages. And then finally, I think, as Dr. Kay mentioned, it's important to develop the ability to use open source software packages for smaller estimation. These are very well documented and make the process a lot easier if you know how to use them, but just knowing how to use them does require a bit of a learning curve. I particularly recommend the EMDI package, which has been one of the best for several years and is very well documented. There are lots of different methods out there. The best depends on the sample, the model accuracy, and the preferences for transparency versus accuracy. One other point I'd mention is that you can specify models at either the household or the village level. Both are generally accurate, but it is important to use the geospatial data at the lowest level possible. So we don't want to aggregate geospatial data from the grid to the target area level before using it. It's best to use it at the grid level if possible. So how do we institutionalize this? I think it's important to spread the word and implement as much as possible to continue simultaneously on the best methods to use under different conditions, because there's still a lot of discussion about that. But we don't want to let the perfect be the enemy of the useful. So even relatively simple linear mixed models as implemented with the EMDI package can be very useful. Continue to develop open source tools and documentation to make this easier, and organize training and capacity building workshops. Thank you again for listening, and I look forward to questions.
Thank you, David. Thank you for this also excellent presentation, demonstrating the value of using geospatial data in combination with survey data, and underlining the importance not only of having access to the data and to the methods, but also to the know-how and infrastructure that allows us to work with that. So let me now pass the floor to my colleague, Hao Chen, who coordinates the Inter-Secretariat Working Group on Household Surveys, and we'll wrap up the round of presentations with the challenges that the group is tackling and the way forward setting that it is setting for the data community. Thank you, Hoy.
Thank you so much, Luis. Yes, I have my slide on and I have my clickers on. Welcome, everyone. Thank you so much. Thank you. We have 10 parallel sessions, and I'm impressed by the number of participants here. I believe you came to the right place. We're way better than all the others. Yes, so today I'm really going to present some of our work related to integration. Our means the Inter-Secretariat Working Group on Household Surveys, but also UN Statistics Division. We have quite a bit of work on data integration together with IEG SDGs. And a lot of work really were done built on all these experience that we've heard in the past 3 presentations. So they'd be fantastic work and cutting edge, and some are really working through the difficulties and challenges. So we have really done a lot of work gathering all these informations and try to see how we bring these messages, for example, the messages that we've heard earlier, and how do we bring them to other countries. So World Data Forum is a place where we also document them and make sure they are being seen and also learned by other countries. So really, first of all, household survey is really still extremely important from the standpoint of view of Inter-Secretariat Working Group on household surveys, not just because I'm the coordinator for the group, but we've done the analysis of the sustainable development goal indicators. Out of 233 indicators, 1/3 of them would rely on household surveys. Not alone, that's why we're here to talk about data integration, but household survey is a fundamental data source still. We're not yet moved away from it yet. And also there are a lot of non-traditional data sources. We've seen geospatial, remote sensing, mobile phone positioning data, and many other sensor data, for example, and then we weren't so sure about the quality of it. Household survey, a good household survey would be a really great source to benchmark it, to really understand the biases that came from other data sources. So there has been a lot of criticism, although it has come down, the criticism has come down since COVID. People realize that how important survey has been during COVID period, and you will not be replaced by big data anytime soon, that we all understand and on the same page. But we do face a lot of challenges, right? When you knock on the door, people don't want to open their door and to respond to your surveys. We have surveys that last for 5 hours, and that is way too long for a respondent to really look at and respond to the questions, because they have all the household chores they have to take care of. And there are a lot of competing data sources as well, competing. And we all know during COVID-19, and we couldn't do household survey. We couldn't knock on the door because with all the quarantine and lockdown measures. So there has been a lot of challenges, and we've been thinking about it. How do we really bring our countries to the next level on household surveys? Now, a little bit about the Inter-Secretariat Working Group on Household Surveys. And our group was established in 2015 by the UN Statistical Commission. It really gave us a mandate to work on 3 things. One is improve coordination of surveys at the global level, national level, and regional level. At the global level, there's so many household survey players. We have our colleagues in different international agencies, all supporting countries. We would like to work together. And the second one is advanced cross-cutting innovative survey methodology. This is why we're here, really look at new data sources and new methods. How do we bring them in and bring them, scaling them up for countries to take up? And the third one is we are there still continue to communicate and advocate the importance of household surveys and advocate for new data sources, new methods, and also advocate for all the great work you have done. So we're there to really amplify the impact of your work. Now, we are currently 11 international agencies, all have something to do with household surveys, and 10 member states, and Malaysia is one of our member states that has got the courage to take up the work on data integration, which is really, really a huge task. And I would like to thank my colleague from Malaysia for taking this task on. It's not going to be an easy journey, but we are really there to support you. Thank you. The Secretariat is the UN Statistics Division, and the group is currently co-chaired by the World Bank and UN Women. So how do we work? We work through time-bound task forces. So right now we have a task force on data integration, and we also have a task force on inclusive data. Right now we're focusing on respondent-centered design. How do we design surveys, questions, and interface to make sure that our respondents are willing to do it. Like we're also willing to put things on Instagram. How do we make sure they are so willing to respond to our survey questions? So we're working on that. And then we work not only with our members, we really reach out to any experts who like to work with us, have the expertise to offer, or would like to raise a question, and then you're welcome to come to us and work with us. Okay, now getting to the position paper that has been mentioned by our Malaysia colleagues. And so all of us were so frustrated with household surveys operations during the pandemic, and all the in-person surveys were stalled, mostly stalled. We couldn't do it. Many countries didn't have a remote data collection, phone or web survey experiences, and they had to really scramble. They all did something, but we didn't know how it goes, how it went. So as a group, we decided to work on really reassess, look at, where we are with household surveys. How do we move forward? Now we've learned so much during the pandemic and how countries, they were so capable of taking up innovations and technologies. How do we move forward as a group and together with our member states to see what's going to happen in the next 10 years? How do we envision the program on household surveys together with other data sources? And I'm linking back to data integration. So we prepared a paper that's currently published on the Journal of Official Statistics, and I'll be happy to share the link to that paper. On that paper, we identify 8 technical priorities, and data integration, as you can see, is number 1, because we really see the value of surveys and working together with that data sources. As we saw earlier, that when we want to have very granular data to not leave the most marginalized population group behind, household survey cannot do it. Most time it cannot do it because we cannot go to the district level or community level. We don't have that kind of resources to have the money there to collect data for everybody. That's why we have to work with remote sensing, mobile phone data, other data censuses, administrative data sources. So it's extremely important for us to be there to work together with other data communities. So these are the 8 priorities, and I'm not going to read them out. It covers different areas. And we also had a section on what are the enabling environment at the national level and international level. And there's the legal dimension, as our Malaysia colleague has mentioned, and the capacity, technical capacity. If there are machine learning, there are a lot of innovations in household survey as well. How do we really support our countries in terms the kind of technology and infrastructure? Now, just focusing on the priority 1, which is on data integration, accessibility of other data sources that's linked to legal framework as well. Sometimes, however, even if there is a legal framework, statistical law said, yes, National Statistical Office can have access to admin data, but it's not available. So it really, a lot has to be worked on data access. And then there's also the second one is data interoperability by design. That has been really mentioned by all of our colleagues. The data are not harmonized. You can't really do it. You have to spend 90% of your time, like in Ghana, to really clean and make sure the 2 data sets will be able to link together. So what we're really advocating for is before we start collecting data through surveys, can we really think about how do we already make data interoperable, thinking ahead that we are going to integrate our data with other data sources? What are the things I'm going to mention later, but there are some things we have been thinking that countries can already do before data collection to make sure these data will be ready for data integration. Now, the third one is the total quality framework. So as a survey statistician, we're so familiar with total error framework for surveys. But how do we assess the quality of integrated data? There's a need for a framework. We don't know how to do it yet, and there has been a lot of discussion in academia and also in countries. So we would like to really move forward on that. And so I'm also working on citizen-generated data. So this is another data, non-traditional data sources, and quality is such an important element over there. Lastly, ethical standard. As our Malaysia colleague has mentioned, we're merging individual level data, we're getting data. So how do we ensure the privacy and confidentiality are really safeguarded? Now moving quickly, we wrote a blog and still with our colleague at the bank and for their comments for the World Data Forum is to really think of household survey community, how do we already make our data collection more interoperable way before the data being collected, right? There's mentioning of harmonized concept of definitions by our colleagues, Pearl from Ghana, and there's georeferencing. The census round, the new census round coming around, are we implementing, do we have georeference, geocoded census data collection in mind? Because census often is our frame. So we need to have that. Can we talk to our census colleague? Can we do it together? And third one is for smart estimation, for example. If we want to integrate the data together, what are the variables that are predictive, good predictive variables? Have that in mind before we start planning the data collection. And lastly, it's sort of a question mark on unique identifiers. It can be very sensitive. So we do have a discussion in the paper, in the blog, and on whether we should do it or we should not do it. Really, it's country contextual, subject to country specific context. Now, I think this is my last slide, and I saw my colleagues coming in. So the Inter-Secretariat Working Group on Household Surveys and the IEG Interagency Expert Group on SDG indicators, we've worked together on the guide toolkit that currently is on the wiki platform open for use, is to really try to understand. We do have guidance, what are the methods for smart estimation, but we talk to many countries, ask them, what are the challenges? You've tried, how come you didn't move forward? You didn't make this your regular production. Some countries have integrated smart estimation into their regular production, but others it just tried once. So we asked them, what happened? What are the challenges? How can we help you? Maybe US did it, their experience can help you. So we have documented all that. Like what we have heard today from Pearl, Pearl would love to connect with you and get your lessons learned experience into our wiki so other countries can also benefit from your experiences. So the wiki platform is currently online. And then please welcome to go and take a look. We also have software packages. We have pseudo data set you can play with, and also reach out to us if you would like to have your experience integrated on the wiki. A smart estimation wiki site. Lastly, we have worked together with our colleagues from ICLAC Statistics Division from Latin American Caribbean region, and also UNFPA on the e-learning course on smart estimation. It's really big. We have reading materials right now. It will be available in 3 languages. Right now it's English and Spanish. And we have 50 recorded videos. And so we will be organizing self-guided and self-paced and also guided learning with our students and their program, their tutors. So stay tuned. And with that, thank you so much. If you like to work with us, come to us. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Haoyi. And we have about 10 minutes for questions from the floor and also from our remote audience. Please raise your hand if you have any question for any of our excellent speakers. I see 2 hands coming up. Oh, my colleague is going to.
It's fine, I'll go first.
Thank you.
My name is Pranay, I'm from Nepal. My question is especially with the last presentation, if you don't mind. Thank you for this fascinating presentation, first of all. I see a lot of proactive approach in terms of achieving data interoperability in terms of harmonization, georeferencing, or predictive variables, or even about the unique identifiers. But my question, I mean, this is a question I've been dealing with in country like Nepal, where, we do talk about interoperability, we do talk about data integration, but I'm more talking about a reactive approach where things have already gone bad. There is no interoperable information systems at all, and we have been trying to figure out, coming up with ways, how do we achieve data integration and when interoperability is not possible. So, in your experience, is there a way where you could, decrease that inefficiency of doing a manual work when you do data integration, when interoperability is not possible? How do we really do it? Is there any mantra? Is there any way in your experience?
So
that
if I may, maybe we can collect 3 questions because we have small time. Over here, Javi.
Okay, thank you very much. So I would like to thank the speaker for this nice presentation. I think my question is for the first speaker and then also the last speaker. I think for when we talk about household survey, I was expecting something that they were supposed to tackle in their presentation about the questionnaire, because you know that's the most important tool that you need to well design. Because if you didn't manage to have a good questionnaire, I think at the end of the day there will be an issue. Because when I look at the first speaker, he was saying that he need to integrate 2 survey before he come up with social account matrix. But in some countries, as I'm working for African Union Institute for Statistics, when you involve a lot the national account expert in your household survey, with one survey you can always already manage your social account matrix. So I think the discussion should be on the questionnaire that we are using. If what we want to achieve, I think that will be the most important. So I want to know if we can elaborate more on the questionnaire, because what we realize in some country now is that we talk about household survey, but at the end of the day, when you look at the questionnaire, you will find some questionnaire relative to health, questionnaire related to agriculture, questionnaire related to many other issues. Because you know, in most of our country now, the demand of statistics is going up, but the fund is going down. So when it comes with household survey, everybody want to put his questionnaire his question aside to have some indicator at the end of the day. Now, how are we going to have a good questionnaire? First of all, to ensure a good data collection, because when your questionnaire is 20 page or 30 page, you bother the those who are the household who are going to answer to this question. So I think I think if you can elaborate more about the questionnaire that you are using, and then how you make sure that you ensure a good response rate. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. And maybe one more question, and then we pass it to our speakers.
Hi, thanks. Yeah, so my question also related to that question raised by the gentleman just now. So I was thinking, why is there a need to have so many household surveys? Why can't we just have proper planning and cut down the number of surveys so that there's less the need for integration? Because I presume each of the surveys will collect duplicative questions, for example, the household demographics, etc. So yeah, why can't we just combine the surveys into one where feasible? Then my next question is related to the Malaysia RAD. Because you mentioned about integrating survey with survey, so my question is, because each survey I presume is selected independently, and it's just a subset of the population. So, and different households will be surveyed in the different surveys. So when you integrate the 2 surveys together, wouldn't the resultant matchable records be small? And with that small, then how is it then be able to yield robust statistics for analysis? Yeah, so just wondering about the match rates between service and service integration. Yeah, thanks.
Thank you so much. Maybe should we start with our colleague from Malaysia?
I try to answer your question. The first is regarding the detailed household survey. Actually, for Malaysia case, we are still in the study. We design the questionnaire where we get some information from other country with the UN Secretariat. So it's in the still study stage. But I really agree with you. We solve the questionnaire very thoroughly. The second is survey with survey also is in the study stage. Sorry to say that. Okay, thank you.
Thank you so much. I mean, there is definitely a lot of research ongoing, and maybe how if you can also address this question about the design, integration by design.
Yes, so we've done a bit work on the coordinated survey system within countries. So we have a task force on survey coordination and integration. So we've documented what has happened in countries. For example, in Canada, they had a really live, how to say, a metadata system. Anybody who is collecting new data, they have to go to that metadata system to make sure it's harmonized and consistent. So I would like to invite you to come to our website, and the documents are available online. We've documented what they've done to make their survey more integrated and harmonized. Now for the survey integration, I would like to push that question to David online, because I know he had written paper about it. David, would you be able to respond to that question?
Sure. I mean, on survey integration, I think one sort of technique, as you were saying, how you use the surveys have comparable questions, as that can really facilitate integrating and using indicators from one survey and applying them to another. So for example, using kind of key common predictors, and we find for a lot of characteristics, for example, that household size and education of the members and assets of the household are key predictors that can be useful for predicting from one survey to another. And this is useful, for example, like the demographic and health surveys might have information on stunting, and the budget surveys might have information on poverty, but we might want to cross the two. And then having these common characteristics defined the same way can be really useful for that. Does that partly address the question?
Thank you, David. I think this is something that we will continue discussing, and hopefully people can reach out to the Inter-Secretariat Working Group. We are running out of time now, and maybe there is a final intervention from our colleague from Ghana. If you have something to add, maybe in relation to the question from our colleague from Nepal, in terms of what do you do when the data is already problematic after the fact?
Thank you. Yes, I think his challenge is really peculiar to ours, because yes, we started this process when, I mean, all the data had already been collected. So really the things we are talking about are retrospective. I mean, a lot of it is really spending the time, as how you mentioned, on harmonizing what you can. And I think the added value of the third data source. So really sometimes when you are struggling to get something common variables in the census and the survey, I mean, you can consider adding administrative data or the geospatial data to help to refine the model better. So, I mean, for us, I think it's really exploring those alternate data sources, particularly because we realize with some of the more health related indicators, it's difficult to find those variables in the census. Not even that it doesn't even harmonize. It's just not even there. Thank you.
Thank you so much, and please join me in thanking all of our 4 wonderful speakers, and I hope we can continue this journey together during the forum and afterwards. Thank you.